All right, so this video is for 373, coordinate geometry with polygons. There are some things that you need to recall from prior quizzes, such as prior quizzes or just prior knowledge. Coordinates comes from your prior knowledge. You need to be able to identify the coordinates of a point on a plane. So for example, this point right here is at -2, 1. You need to be able to come up with a -2, 1. Okay, you need to remember what parallel lines are. They have the same slope. Okay, and perpendicular lines, they have a negative reciprocal for a slope. So 1/3 becomes -3 and so forth. Slope. Slope is the change in y over the change in x. And distance formula relates to the Pythagorean theorem, where you will subtract your x's. Whoops. I was jumping ahead as to what to write. And add it to the distance of your y's squared. Okay, so that is the distance formula. So these are things that you need to be able to recall for your quiz, coordinate geometry with polygons. So let's run through an example of why you need to know these things. So given this diagram of a rectangle, and here are our the coordinate points of the vertices. Okay, the question is the following shape a rectangle? How do you know? So we need to decide that if it's a rectangle, these two sides will be parallel, as well as these two sides. Also, these two sides, the negative sloped sides, they will be perpendicular to our positive sloped sides. So let's first find the slope of these two sides, and then we will compare with those two. So we are going to take 2 minus 1 over 1 minus -2. That might be kind of tiny. I'll write larger from here on out. 2 minus 1 is 1. 1 subtract a -2 is same as adding, so that is 3. This is the slope of 1/3. Okay, so this bottom line down here needs to also have a slope of 1/3. So we'll take -1, subtract a -2. Over 2, subtract -1. So this is like adding -1 plus 2 is equal to 1. 2 subtracted -1 is 3. So this also has a slope of 1/3. That's good because these two lines are parallel. So now we need to check these two lines here. So we're going to take our y's again. 1, subtract -2. -2 subtract -1. Okay, becomes adding when we subtract a negative, so we get 3 over -1. 3 over -1 is the same as -3. Okay, so let's stop right here and think for a minute. -3 is a negative reciprocal of 1/3. That means this line, or this line segment, meets at a 90-degree angle with these two line segments because they are negative reciprocals of each other. Now that's all that is left to find out is if this side is also parallel to that one. Yep, so we are going to take our y's. 2 minus -1 over 1 minus 2. 2 subtract -1 becomes addition. So we get 3. 1 minus 2 is -1. As you can recall, our prior slope we just found, that's -3. And so again, these two sides are perpendicular. We have parallel lines and perpendicular line segments. So this is indeed a rectangle. That is how you find out if a rectangle or if a diagram is a rectangle. If they do not have parallel, opposite sides are not parallel, and two sides that form a corner, if they are not perpendicular, then it is not a rectangle. So let's try the same type of problem with a triangle. We want to know if the shape is a right triangle. So I'm just going to draw that. Is it a right triangle, and how do you know? Let me get our diagram up here. So we have a vertex at 2, 4, a vertex at 5, 1, and our third vertex at 1, negative 3. Okay, so we need to test and see if this is a right triangle. So I'm going to look at this and I'm going to think, even though this is not drawn to scale, obviously I'm not putting this on a coordinate plane, I can still kind of see about where my possibility of a right angle is. It's possibly there. So I'm not going to draw a solid little squared line in. I'm going to kind of dot that to ghost my right angle and see if it works out. So I'm going to check this line segment and see if it's perpendicular to this line segment here. If they are perpendicular, then we have a right triangle. So 4 minus 1 over 2 minus 5. That would be 3 over negative 3. 3 divided by a negative 3 is a negative 1. So we have a slope of negative 1. In order for this one to be perpendicular, it needs to have a slope of a positive 1. So let's test it and see. We're going to have 1 subtract negative 3 over 5 subtract 1. 1 minus a negative 3 is 4. 5 minus 1 is 4. And 4 divided by 4 is indeed 1. So we have slopes that are negative reciprocals of each other. So 1 and negative 1 are the negative reciprocals. That creates a right angle right here. So we do indeed have a right triangle. So again, if these were not negative reciprocals of each other, then we would not have a right angle, so it would not be a right triangle. This is coordinate geometry with polygons. You just need to test your sides to see if they are parallel and perpendicular. Some other information that you need to know are on transformations. So translations move a shape but will not change the side. So a translation will take your shape and it can slide all around, but the size of it remains the same. Rotations will rotate your shape in either clockwise or counterclockwise, but again, the size is not altered. And then reflections, we could reflect over the X or the Y axis, and that also does not alter the size of the shape. Dilations multiply the shape by a scale factor so that they either increase in size or decrease in size. So dilations are the only transformations that alter the size of a shape. If you have any further questions on this, let me know.